Hi, and welcome to the It's Just Business podcast with myself, Richard Price. In this podcast, I interview some of the best business minds and entrepreneurs, diving deep into their business journey to get those valuable business lessons they have learned for entrepreneurs like you to succeed on your business journey. So listen up, listen in, let's begin. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the It's Just Business podcast. Today, I'm joined by Peter and Dan. They are co-founders of Sip Champagnes. Hey, Dan. Hey, Peter.
Hey.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hey.
Good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, let's get straight into it. Tell us a bit about yourselves and what Sip Champagnes is.
So you'll discover very much as we chat that we are definitely two parts to the business. Hopefully that work brilliantly and cohesively together. So I'm the champagne nut. So I've been working in the champagne industry for 20 years. I say working. I've been going over to Champagne, exploring the region, talking with winemakers, and just basically falling completely in love with it. It's an incredible region. And Dan and I met probably about 10 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, something like that, 10, 11 years.
There or thereabouts. And we were very keen on kind of champagne. Very quickly, we kind of chatting about champagne, and I organised some champagne for his wedding. And it became clear, and Dan, I'm sure, will expand on the story, but it became clear that the champagne went down really well, and his friends and family were asking where they got it. And as COVID hit, or just before COVID, actually, really, early 2020.
Yeah, it was the very end of January 2020. We met up.
Yeah, so I'd always had this kind of idea about doing it, and I because I travel to the region so often. I would come back with cases of champagne and we'd share them with my friends and family, and it was always something I kind of did casually. And then Daniel, off the back of the wedding and the people interested in it, said, look, there's an opportunity here. There's something special about these wines. You can't find them on the UK market. The UK market loves champagne. We're still the biggest in terms of volume, the biggest champagne market outside of France itself. So it made sense, and I had all the connections. I knew all these winemakers, so we met up and we started pushing the idea around, and then COVID hit. But it's staggering to think that in the whole process of this business, Daniel and I have physically met. Is it twice?
Yeah, twice only. We've done the entire thing to where we are right now. Like this, right? Much like most businesses that are able to function at the moment. It's been a challenge, right? Yeah. It's but we're incredibly proud really of what we've done. Like, it's been a journey. Like we had started dabbling in things about this time last year after that initial chat, but it was very early on, and we'll go into more details about this. I'm sure in a bit, but just creating the infrastructure to bring this product across was a mammoth task, because it just didn't exist. It just the ability to get or working with the sheer number of growers or grower producers that we do, they're not traditionally big enough to enter, say, the markets in terms of supermarkets, restaurants, the trade business, right? They just don't have many of them just don't have the production size. So we had to create that, which was a challenge.
And also, sorry, just a little technicality as well on top of that is not only are they not the size, but when you work with logistics mechanisms that exist currently, they're not set up either to deal with those sizes as well. So we've had to create our own infrastructure to get the stock across, taking into account the numbers of producers that we work with and the number of wines that we work with. There isn't another company out there doing that that level of
Right.
producers and that level of cuvées.
So Pete sort of went through the whole background, but it just to emphasize like how well like those champagnes went down for the wedding. It was phenomenal that like Pete was saying, he has been bringing across these grower champagnes, these artisan champagnes for many years, and that's how when we decided to get married, my wife and I, the only person I thought I would speak to would be Pete about like, where can I get something, just not necessarily something really expensive, but something that was a bit more unique, had a bit of a story behind it, because everyone has their own story, and I wanted something that to be like the story to feature in our story of our day, of in front of with our friends and our families, right. And it was just incredible. The response, the amount that we got through for one was great, and then the response from our friends and families off the back of that, with people asking me where to buy it, and then that was that realization of, what, you can't actually get this stuff. I didn't realize how hard it was to get, because I just would go to Pete and say, "Oh, can I have some of this?" and it would magically appear a few months later, and that realization of it's not just the UK. And when we started looking into the market and doing a little bit more market research, it's not just the UK. This is outside of some quite specific countries, really. Like perhaps it's certainly a little bit bigger and known about in the Champagne region for sure. But the US, as an example, has a huge appetite for grower champagne, for artisan champagne, and East Asia as well. And it's really hard to get this stuff, partly because of that supply chain, and partly because there is so much choice. There are thousands upon thousands of growers out there who can't access these markets because they're dominated by the large houses. Now, we have nothing against the large houses at all. They're very good at what they do. But it makes it really, really hard for the farmers ultimately to get their expressions across, to get their products to market, and that's where we come in.
So, what were they doing before? What do they typically do? These sort of smaller farmers of champagne.
Yeah. So as I said earlier on, France is still the primary market, and most of the products are sold directly to France, or what's called from the cellar door. So visitors would come and they'd buy, 6 cases of X cuvée from a particular producer, and that would. I mean, the world is changing, obviously. So the marketplace is opening up, but that would be the classic way with which a smaller producer would sell. And the reality and the reason why is because the production numbers are so small that if they go to, let's say, they go to 1 or 2 markets, so let's say the UK or America and maybe China or Australia or wherever they go, the kind of people taking on those champagnes classically would have said, right, well, I need 5,000 bottles. And that's half their production gone. And it just doesn't, you can't, both the person selling it will be cut out eventually because the producer can't produce enough to do that, and their French market. So what you need is a company like Sip to take on not 5,000 bottles, but take on 500 bottles and distribute appropriately to various markets, and that's what we want to try and achieve.
There's that and the Grand Maisons, the big champagne houses, buy up the grapes and the juice from the growers themselves. So that's how the big champagne houses sort of make their products from the growers. So the growers, as Pete said, typically have much lower runs.
So rewinding back then, it's the midst of COVID. You guys, the lockdown is pretty much all-time high, and you guys decided to launch an e-commerce business. I want to emphasize as a Sip Champagne is an e-commerce champagne business that also, I think, lends itself towards subscriptions as well. Seems like quite a feat. You need to get photos. You need to perhaps talk to your producers as well. What was the sort of timeline like between initiation of idea and sort of soft launch or launch?
Yeah, sure. That was so we first spoke about this. So I'd been thinking about it at the tail end of 2019, and then Pete and I got together, actually over a glass of champagne, as it was, and of course. Pete was so Pete also has hosted a number of champagne tasting events, which is something that we sort of started incorporating into Sip for our subscribers, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we spoke at the end of January 2020. Then we opened up publicly on the 31st of July. So it took us 6 or 7 months really to get through creating the website. That was that was complex, but probably not the most complex aspect of it. The creating that infrastructure, negotiating with the producers and selecting the right stock for us to showcase those producers in certainly in the UK to begin with was hard, and then getting the samples across. I and my wife did all the photography and still do all the photography. So all the sample shots, everything sort of photography wise we handle right now. That's been tough because we've only had our flat to place items. So the backdrop. Exactly, yeah. So it's if you do look closely, there are just many repeating backgrounds across all the imagery because we just don't have we've not been able to go anywhere else. It's so we tend to have samples sent to here, and then I photograph, and then I send the samples up to Pete, and Pete does the tasting. That's generally how it works.
And I would like to point out as well, very importantly, Daniel's acquired a skill of Photoshop that is second to none.
I have. I've had to learn how to Photoshop because we realised subscriptions are really the center, or the subscription model is really the center of our model, and it's all around that exploration of the Champagne region and of the different producers, the different grapes, and so on, and the methods of producing these bottles, these unique bottles. But we also, because of the sheer breadth of the products, we wanted to give users or customers who perhaps weren't ready to commit to a subscription a way to sample different expressions, and that's why when we came up with the concept of these sort of tasting cases that gave you a little bit of an indication of something, or an idea of something. But at this stage, all the samples had gone to Pete. Pete had done the tasting, and so because the runs are so limited, I had to work out how to create these case images from existing sample shots and teach myself Photoshop.
Oh, nice.
So that's how we came up.
Just like copy paste 6 bottles.
Yeah, but that doesn't quite work because then all the shadows are different. So you have to put in the drop shadow, and then So I guess so. Launching was about 7 months. The creating that infrastructure, getting the products across, working out how we could, because alcohol also is a regulated product, right? So we had to think about all of those complexities to make sure that we were complying with all the regulation. We decided to transport the bottles in bonds, so we had to find a partner or partners that we could work with for warehousing and then distribution and fulfillment to the end customer. There's an awful lot that we hadn't really factored in when we just thought, we could start selling artisan champagne. That sounds like a great idea. The market is there. And then there's all this other stuff that you come across and go, yeah.
Is that because I guess champagne, you need to keep it within a certain temperature? And
yeah, that was a real problem, because when we were approaching our sort of launch target window in high summer, and
not just high summer. I think it was a particular period of hot weather. I think we'd had plus 30 plus degrees for I think 2 or 3 weeks, if you can remember.
Something particularly in the Champagne region.
Yeah, exactly. And most champagne producers simply won't send. So the first shipment we had to get it. I mean, all our shipments now are temperature controlled, but it had to be temperature controlled from beginning to end. So we ended up spending a lot more on the first shipment just to get it all completely temperature controlled and sorted end to end.
But it was really interesting for us with the because the producers, some of the producers certainly hadn't done this before, and so sort of just trying to get stock in the right places at the right time, so we could collect and then ship across without breaking the entire supply chain. That was complex in itself.
Right.
So yeah, that took a little bit of time, and we've streamlined it over time, and we're now at a point where we've just taken out we've not opened a new warehouse, but we've opened an account with a bonded warehouse in France, in the Champagne region itself, to streamline things.
Right.
And we're much more set up now than we were. It was tough at the beginning.
Good. It always is. It always is. If it was easy, someone would have done it. So,
yes. Yeah.
That's what you got to tell yourself.
Exactly.
Let's fast forward then to July. It was launch. What did that look like for you? How did you think about acquiring customers? I guess you, as an e-commerce business, it's quite difficult it takes a while for Google SEO to kick in and all that kind of jazz. So how have you managed to gain traction so far? And if you can give us an idea of perhaps some numbers or that you've seen already in the first 6 months of
like all things, and we'll go on to talk about Seedrs in a second, because I think it is an important aspect of what we're trying to do long term. But I think both Dan and I had already, because of the fact that we've been talking about the business and we've been involved with trading champagne, as in me getting champagne for him for wedding, etc. I think that first step, and this is the thing with so many small businesses, that first step, the first couple of transactions, friends, family, those people who you love a bit of champagne, it's all about that communication to start off with. And I think we had a good network of 20, 30 people who we knew would buy a few bottles or a case here or there, and I think that was a really good starter for us to get things moving. And then the rest, I'd like Dan to explain the rest.
Yeah, no, I mean exactly that. We obviously we've been doing bits on the build up to the public launch on the 31st of July. The way we initially acquired was we both sort of had a list of people that we thought might be interested, and I created some really rudimentary onboarding journeys for emails. We had a landing page, and we started posting across our own sort of social profiles and started to try to build a little bit of a buzz around things. And once they entered their email, then we automated these sort of onboarding journeys just to sort of drop hints of things coming, just to keep people engaged. And then we ended up with a lot more than we thought we would get initially sort of signed up. So we segmented where we had our essentially like our the people that we knew that would probably engage with it and buy something initially, that we opened up to first, and then opened up about a week later, I think it was, to the sort of the general database, other people that signed up that were interested. So because of that first run, we were running on fumes, and we brought over as much stock as we could really realistically afford, which wasn't much. It was trying to be very particular with sort of unique bottles that we we thought people would enjoy, engage with. They couldn't get anywhere else, and so we wanted to make sure that those people got first dibs, really, because we'd been chatting to them, and then we opened up a week later to everyone else. So yeah, it was creating a little bit of buzz on social, and just hassling friends and family in our network, our wider network, to try and bring them on board with this journey. And it went phenomenally well in the end. It went really, really well. But it sort of surprised us, really, because we suddenly realised within like a month or two, we more or less sold out, and so we had to scramble to bring in the next shipment, which was double the size, and then the next shipment was like treble the size, and that's sort of how it's grown.
Great, that's amazing. And I guess it's always the way, trying to get, not say always the way, but a very good way to get friends and family to help support, and sort of closer circles, and then sort of organically start to, loosen the rope.
Like we'd spent in amongst that sort of that 7 months of building up to opening, we'd spent quite a bit of time researching the wider markets I touched on earlier. And so I'd done a little bit of keyword research up front. So right from the off, we were targeting specific things that I thought there was a bit of a gap in, that other companies weren't targeting, which is built over time, which is now starting to work out. There was a little bit of paid marketing, just me dabbling around, but I'm not really a marketeer in any sense. But, my background, in fact, I didn't really introduce myself at the beginning, did I? Maybe I could talk a little bit about that. My background is in product management, so I've worked in tech for the last 11, 12 years or so. So I've worked across a number of startups, scaled startups, and worked within enterprises, and so yeah, that's my background. I sort of come at it from that sort of product management perspective. I've seen a problem.
So you're tech,
yeah,
and then Peter's like, just being a connoisseur, champagne connoisseur.
Yeah, I mean, very much selecting the right product.
pretty much that.
Yeah, I mean, it's Pete's expertise in terms of the product. So that's sort of how we bring things together. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you play to your strengths, right?
Yeah.
Pete's been spending 10 odd years plus in Champagne, just getting merry, and you've been hunkered down at the keyboard, making stuff work in sort of text.
Yeah, solving problems, and this was a problem that we saw.
So could you tell us a bit more about the model then? Is it that you're buying a bottle from these independent farmers for a price, or cases, and then you look to package them up and make a 50% margin on them, roughly, whatever, something that sort of can sustain you? Is it as simple as that?
I think so. From my perspective, something is very important to get across is, number one, we are talking cases, yes, but what I wanted to achieve, and it's what fascinates me. Sip to me is very much what I want in a champagne shop, somewhere. If I wanted, I buy champagne a lot myself, and Sip is exactly what I want to see. It's artisanal producers who care about their vines, care about the environment, care about all of those things that do matter. But most importantly, the wines are excellent. We made a thing and made a point of saying at the very, very beginning, it's going to be about, and I don't mean this in a kind of arrogant or selfish way, but they're champagnes that I love. That's it. That's the factor. Because I'm not in any way having to go at any other sellers of champagne, but you go onto any other website, you'll see a plethora of champagnes or a plethora of wines or whatever. It's not, there's no golden rule across them all. It's just what sells best, and that's best for them, and that's fine. But Sip, for me, and what I wanted to do was to get the best champagnes available onto the UK market and beyond. So,
and that's something worth actually just focusing on slightly, is that whereas other retailers bring on a producer and bring on all of their lines, we select like the very best that we think this really, really represents this producer or this area, or it has to be something really special, and nobody else does that. Which for us is just it's so important. Like we curate every single thing that we bring on.
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be. Although, like Pete said, although they do, most, if not all, of our producers have it's like HVE or what are the other certifications?
Viticulture durable or organic or biodynamic status.
Exactly. It's not that they are organic, or that it's that this is just an incredible bottle. This is an incredible expression, and they happen to be organic as well. It's that it's that focus. But we do ensure that we are, like, for us, it's starting there, but then we are totally carbon neutral across the supply chain. So we offset all of our carbon from our shipping. All of our packaging is 100% recyclable and recycled. So it's sort of that right from the beginning. It's all about the focus on the best lines, the best care for the land, and we do our part all the way through. I thought that was quite important just to highlight people.
No. I think it's very important, very important. But so for me, it was always about what I would like to see on the shelves of a champagne shop, and to have that expertise, whatever you want to call it, selecting the wines and getting the best expressions of a particular terroir, a particular soil, or a particular village, or a particular producer. And what's really exciting is the producers are really getting behind it now, and we've got him coming over in April. We'll have the first champagne that we have selected completely ourselves, so it'll be absolutely unique to Sip Champagnes. And that's what we really want to try and go towards, have this true selective process where we can go to producers and pick a parcel or pick a particular disgorgement or whatever, and that's something that I really want to get behind. It's a really exciting process for us.
That, it's quite interesting, because what you're kind of explaining there is a moat almost. You're trying, like you're selecting, you're being very particular in your selection, and so much so that you're saying others can't do it. Like, it's not repeatable. Not everybody has your palate, and therefore you can't get this kind of selection anywhere. So you're sort of almost saying that there's no competition.
Interestingly, we are aware of two larger competitors who shall remain nameless, who are following us on socials, who have had some of our bottles bought for them for Christmas presents, as an example, just because we know who they are. And so and they happen to bring on, or try and bring on, a similar line from the same producer, shortly after we have, which is it's a compliment, right? Like sorry, my doorbell's just rung. I don't know if you heard that in the background. So like we are aware of competitors trying to follow what we're doing, but that's business, right?
Of course, and I mean, it's kind of, you could say it's flattering, but it's also a good sign that your finger's on the right pulse.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you think? I mean, perhaps you haven't got an agreement with the farmers, but how do you consider your defense around it?
So no, we do have agreements in place with most of the producers that we work with. They're rolling agreements, so we're not trying to tie farmers in indefinitely. It's not something we want to try and achieve. The beauty and the great thing that we can do, and I hope that a number of our producers get to a point where, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was really interesting. You sent the survey earlier on, and Dan and I were kind of talking about elements of and our drive and what we wanted. Look, we want to make Sip big. It's our goal. We want to be a company that's delivering champagne, excellent champagne and beyond, to the rest of the world. And we want to be the go-to name for champagne. But as we grow to that size, I hope that we bring champagnes on, and I will talk about names, I'm sure, at various points during this podcast. But I really do hope that producers get their names out there and go, actually, Peter, Dan, I'm gonna work with somebody now who can take over. Instead of taking over 500 bottles, I want to now sell 5,000 bottles. And at the moment, we can't facilitate that number. I hope in the future we can. But and if we can help them get onto a market, then that's great. That's fantastic, because we've got, and this is not poo-pooing any of the producers, we've got so many more producers to bring. I mean, the champagne is a vast area with thousands and thousands of producers. We can just bring another 5 in next month, and another 5 a few months after that, and just keep the ball rolling and keep it fresh, keep people's palates working. I think that, to me, is a really exciting thing.
Yeah, it's that exploration that is so key to us. It's exploring, and we're always exploring. We're always sort of. There was a particular bottle, a half bottle that is done really well, sold really well. That was an example of just this exploration. Like, Pete can tell the story much better than I can, but it was Pete squirreling away in one of the producer's cellars.
Yeah, I always get told off for this. So whenever I'm over in a champagne producer, I when they're they'll be pouring some wine, and I'll kind of just walk away into the cellar and have a look around. And I found this pallet of half bottles just sitting to the left-hand side, and it had a big cover over it. It clearly hadn't been lifted up, and I lifted it up and had a look. And they were the Brut Sans Année, so it's a non-vintage champagne from a producer called Pierre Legrasse, and it was 4 years old. So it was a 2012 base. At the moment, they're just moving on to the 2017, but they were selling the 2016 at the time base, which is the youngest vintage in the wine. And so it's had an extra 4 years aging, and it's in half bottle. And I said, what's going on here? Said, well, we don't really sell half bottles. And we were like, well, that's going to be delicious. So we grabbed a bottle, and it was absolutely amazing. Just the most beautiful champagne. And I said, well, how many can we get? And she said, well, I say we don't sell it. And then we stupidly said, well, look, let's take a load. I can't remember how many we took at the start, but let's take a load and see how they go. And they sold out like that. And we'd done a load of stuff on social. We'd done, I told a few friends, and we sold it. And I about 3 or 4 weeks later, I rang up Marceline Legrasse. I said, Marceline, the half bottles went down so well. Can you send some more? And in between us doing a bit of social, a bit of stuff, suddenly they'd sold the lot. And it's just unbelievable. And that's how quick it is. And we ended up. So I rang her up.
Who did they sell them to?
Well,
who bought them?
This is the problem. So now this particular producer already has a marketplace around. So we're not. They're
one of the larger growers that we work with. So their name is quite well known already.
Right. And the thing is, the world of champagne is so small. So I post about it, and a couple of my friends post about it, and then somebody in Germany or somebody in whatever would have just gone and bought them. So I turned to her for the 2013 base, which is the next one. I said, look, I want 2 pallets of this. You're not selling them to anywhere else. So we just secured 2 pallets.
So I mean, and this was a bit of a learning as well. This was sort of us realizing that we need to be a little bit more clever with how we talk about what we're doing and what we're bringing on for the future, because people are watching, and we need to make sure that we're looking after Sip and the producers, really.
Yeah, exactly.
And that we're able to keep delivering on what our vision is.
Yeah, you're gonna have these champagne X-Files that no one can see. It's all locked up, and these coordinations of where the farmers are. Okay, so just moving on. So yeah, I noticed that it seems like you're looking to raise financing or do a round with Seedrs. Perhaps you want to speak about that, and again, just about the growth that you've seen so far and your projections for 2021.
Yeah, great. So yes, we're ultimately looking to raise some funds. This is primarily to help us expand into other territories, other countries. We had a really nice feature in the FT's How to Spend It back in December, which sort of opened us up to the global market. We had a number of publications back in December on the Independent as well, and that weekend, as soon as it was published, we started receiving emails from people in the US, in Hong Kong, and we realized that this market is it's bigger than just the UK. It is bigger than just Europe. No one else is doing this right now, as in no one has the breadth of product that we do. No one has the curation that we do, and so we thought, let's just do this. Let's just open up, test those markets, and see how we go. And it's been really, really good. Very small numbers right now in the US and in East Asia, but enough numbers for us to go, we need to be there. If we don't do it, someone else is going to do this. Brexit has hurt and complicated things, so that's partly why we've had to simplify our supply chain and open up the warehouse in France. But then that allows us a bit of a staging point for us to then distribute globally from there. Yeah, and it makes a little bit more sense.
It makes so much more sense to have a place. Brexit has caused all sorts of nightmares, and frustratingly, we're discovering every single step Brexit's got its little finger in, just sort of squeezing more money from every single
increasing admin fees seemingly on a weekly basis almost. It's to transport from one point to just the warehouse, to land in that warehouse, there's another admin fee. To write some documentation, there's another admin fee now. To every single step of the way, there's an admin fee. And they change on a weekly basis, and they're changing again.
They're changing
June,
again.
July.
Yeah.
Oh, April they're changing, and then July they're changing again. It's difficult. So what we're with what we've seen, the positives that we've seen outside of the UK and Europe, like we've had a little bit of traction in Europe as well, as we've sort of dabbled in places, is we need to have bases ultimately in those areas. So to land, the US is quite a complicated market in that each state has its own alcohol duty licenses, and it's complicated. So we need to have a little bit of stock going over there, but it's huge. It's 6 times the size of the UK market for sparkling wine and for champagne, for grower champagne, that is specifically. So we know we need to raise a little bit to help us grow. We can do it ourselves, but we will do it slower, and we're conscious that someone else will get there if we don't. So we want to expand there. We need to bring on more people ultimately. Pete and I were doing this just with the two of us for until about November, I think. It was end of November. We brought on a few extra people to help us. We've since brought on 1, 2, 3, 4 people part-time, but we're looking to expand that and to bring them on full-time. We're at a point where there's just so much to do, so much sort of communication. There's we need to increase our marketing expertise for one, and bring more people on for more hours, hopefully, and sort of bring them along with this journey. So those are sort of the key things, and in amongst that buying of more product to send to different areas, we need to there are administration fees with that. We will need to buy services, say as an example, in the US to operationally run those places. That's ultimately what we're trying to achieve.
And sorry, just to add on to that, champagne side of it.
Yeah.
And importantly, stock as well. Stock is the big thing. So we because of what I was describing earlier on and having unique products, that, instead of buying several cases of that and several cases of that, when we buy a run, it'll be a pallet of something, and that's obviously the prices of those are going to start pushing up quite big, quite quick.
Yeah, but it allows us to buy things. It gives us a little bit more flex in terms of wholesale pricing. So the more we can buy, the more bargaining power that we then have. And in terms of milestones and sort of what we've seen to date, so we between July, so our opening and the end of last year, we grew our sales by 301%. Since just October, we've grown our subscribers by 414%, which has been phenomenal. That's included that expanding. So we've expanded now to Europe, to the US, and to East Asia. But the way that we do it right now is sort of prohibitive to the wider market, is our feeling, because we're having to ship or import now into the UK and then export to the end consumer in different countries, and that's not cheap. It's if we want to build on that audience, we need more of a presence in those countries ultimately. But the traction is we're seeing some really positive traction. So that's ultimately what we're trying to do. Like the numbers are looking really promising, and it's very exciting.
Good. No, it does sound exciting, and I can imagine the world of champagne is like I imagine it's very very vibrant and exciting, and especially I guess last year everyone's locked down and wanted a bit of some happiness in their life. Not say happiness, but some bubbles in their life to kind of lighten things up a bit. So
that might be why the half bottles sold so well. People certainly in people locked down who are living on their own. You might not want to open up a full bottle. Like a half bottle is quite a nice, easy size just to have of an evening, and it's not an awful lot to drink on your own.
Take the edge off things. So you said you made a few hires. Where have you hired? What specific areas have you needed help with, and why?
Yeah, sure. So we first communications. He started as a sort of content strategist, content writer, because Pete and I had, until November, Pete and I had sort of cobbled together the content and were writing all the emails. We were just doing everything across the business. And neither of us, Pete has an awful lot of knowledge in his sort of champagne knowledge, but neither of us are, I don't think, are particularly great at sort of putting it all down.
Yeah, neither of us are very good at writing stuff out. So.
Yeah. So we thought that felt like something that we had to improve. If we were to grow, we had to improve that. So that was one of our first, and that's been really, really, really positive. And so we've just brought him on for more hours, and we realised that although the content's improved massively and continues to, we needed someone who could help with our sort of communication strategy generally. So he's now sort of taking on a slightly larger role, which is fantastic. We needed more focus and support on our digital marketing. So we currently have 3 people there working on our I guess acquisition strategy is a larger term, where we focus the sort of keywords we should be focusing, how we structure the website, what we go after. We've started pushing out a few PPC campaigns, so AdWords and so on. How we target those, because you've got to continuously optimize those. You've got to be looking at the data, and neither one of us have the ability, the time to do that anymore. It's got to the point where we just don't. We can't cover all of that. And the same with social media. We needed someone specific to focus on building that audience and engaging with that audience in a much more sort of holistic way. So that those have been the areas that we focused on initially. We know we will. We've also got to a point where we need to improve our supply chain, or not supply chain, I guess our fulfillment, our end-to-end fulfillment. So we're part of the bringing on the French warehouse will be an operations person who we will bring on over the coming months, who will help sort of coordinate between France, the producers, the warehouse, the UK bonded warehouse, and then what will become the US. And we're exploring the idea of a warehouse in Hong Kong and or Japan at the moment, because those markets are of a similar size to the US market, so around 5 to 6 times bigger than the UK. So that'll be quite a key hire in the coming months, I believe.
That's great. And I think, don't correct me if I'm wrong, but with champagne, you kind of mentioned this, I think, earlier, but it doesn't, the price goes up. It holds its value, and perhaps it probably goes up in value as time goes on.
It can do, yeah.
So my question was just, is there much risk of buying wholesale and shipping off to Hong Kong and it not selling, or you having leftover bottles? Is that a risk?
It shouldn't be. So the kind of champagnes that we are bringing on board and we're working with are champagnes that not only will age, but as you rightly point out, will gain in value. Some of the producers are very, very young. So we've got a number of producers, maybe say 10 or so producers, where we have brought them on in their first ever year, their first ever vintage year. So Georges Remy, Gaspard Brochet, Domaine Vinci, these guys are literally the first champagnes they've ever produced, and we brought them on. I'm confident that their wines will age beautifully and they will gain as they age. It's not as simple as the kind of equation that you'd put a bottle of Dom Perignon or a bottle of Cristal, which will definitely, you'll see a release price, the next vintage comes out, the previous vintage goes up 10% or 15%. It's not as simple as that, but I don't believe there's any risk. And the beauty as well, it's not a cost-effective way of doing it, but if we do miscalculate logistics, we can always ship things back and distribute to appropriate markets if need be. Or worst case scenario, I have them for my cellar.
Yeah, peace is our ultimate fallback. So far, and as we've expanded and brought more and more, as our orders, our shipments have increased, we've just brought over our largest by a long way shipment to date, and immediately have had to bring over we have 2-3 more in the. We've
got three more
in the pipeline.
3 more shipments, and one of those is 3 pallets. So we've got 5 more pallets coming over.
Well, we found that things are shifting quite well. We focused really our more recent marketing efforts on trying to build like the buzz. It's not building like a false buzz. It's the buzz that we're really excited about these products that we're bringing over, and so we're trying to sort of communicate that more effectively. And what that's resulted in is that we've of a number of our lines we've sold out before we've even managed to land it in our warehouse, which has been phenomenal, which has been fantastic. So we're fairly confident that we can continue to do that, because these are unique champagnes. They are. We're all about bringing something special to the consumer. And so as soon as we start opening up those markets, as long as we're still communicating that effectively in those markets, there's no reason why we shouldn't continue to see the sales that we are.
Absolutely. The future's bright. The future's champagne.
Yeah.
You can keep that one. I'll let you keep that one. Just conscious of time. So you're looking to raise a round with Seedrs this year and potentially expand into international. Any other sort of milestones that you're aiming towards this year before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how what sort of details we can or should go into at the moment, because we have become so conscious of people watching us, so we're trying to keep a few things under wraps. But we're still, in fact, we're beating our forecasts at the moment for the year, which is phenomenal. We've been, I think, quite cautious in terms of what we're sort of expecting in terms of revenues. So far, we're performing above what we expected, which is phenomenal. We at current rates, we're expecting to be hitting the 1 million plus by year 3. That's a long way off, and a lot can happen in that time. But it's not unrealistic from what we're seeing right now, which is amazing and really exciting. And we continue to bring on. I mean, this quarter alone, we've brought on 7 or 8 brand new producers to the market that nobody else has. And it's not just nobody else in the UK. Some of these you can't get anywhere else in the world, which really plays into our. This is part of our strategy for expanding. So that's really, really exciting. And as we said a few times, I mean, there will be many, many years until we exhaust the sort of the new exciting producers and wines that are always being produced and sort of coming on. Like we have Pete name checked 3 producers in the last year who have just done their first line, their first run of champagnes. So that's just one example.
Yeah, and we've got another shipment coming over in April, late April, realistically, and we'll have, again, there 7 producers, and all of them are brand new, absolutely brand new, first vintages, first ever. It's super exciting.
That's great. And I think, with champagne, it's kind of like art in a way. Like you need the story sells it, especially with artisanal champagne, because it's not just your Moet or whatever that you can get off the shelf. There's a reason why people are buying it. It's the uniqueness. So, you guys definitely seem to have tapped something very, very, very lucrative and very, very exciting indeed. So. With that said, Dan, Peter, I know we could talk about champagne over cups of water for hours. Next time, we should definitely get the champagne in. But
that'd be great.
We absolutely should, yeah.
Absolutely. I want to thank you for your time. And if you just want to, let everybody know where they can find you and
amazing. I mean, thank you for having us. You can find us on our website on sipchampagnes.com. We across our various social profiles. I think we're more prolific on our Instagram, which I'm just trying to find the handle of. I always get this wrong.
Sip_champagnes.
Thank you. That was it. Yeah.
He knows.
So across all the social profiles that you would expect, but everything is sort of centered on our website. So sipchampagnes.com, and on Seedrs. If you, I think we're currently featured on the homepage as a coming soon. And we'll be launching the campaign probably in the coming weeks.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, great. Well, I hope that all goes well, and I'm sure it will. You're two sort of passionate people about champagne, so and it's a good market. So I'm sure you'll burst your target.
We hope so.
Yeah. We hope so. Yeah, we very much hope so.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining, and take care. See you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Nice one.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.